Our time frame is getting tight. Huh?
You got an hour.
A whole other hour? I do? Is that in my schedule that way? I made a commitment to be somewhere else.
I don't think so.
No, I'm supposed to be here, aren't I, Russ? All right, good, please.
Would education be anywhere in there as far as keep self-growth and educating yourself?
Well, I don't, that's part of the, for me, for me, it's just how I would say those are the, I got a master money, health, and relationship, but how I'm going to become a master of money or is education, just like what you guys are doing right now. And then the foundation is these 6 things. So what I realize is anybody who has I want to say fearless nature, who is driven beyond measure, who has, you just feel their desire, their energy, their passion towards life, is that they are living their life with a deep sense of purpose. I'm going to write a number of words up here, right? But I wrote down the word purpose, and I remember when early on, 20 years ago, I wrote down the word, they know their why. And sometimes people get sick of hearing that, but man, you got to know what's driving you in this business. Is it money? I can promise you it'll be fleeting. You'll earn some, and then you'll have enough, and then you won't be motivated anymore. It's bigger than that. You need to know your purpose, your why. I put other words up here, desire, right? Just what is it that you want your life to be about? What do you desire most? What is your greatest purpose? What is maybe even your legacy? Why do you want what you want? And when you know that, every decision is driven based on that. Everything that you want is driven based on that purpose, that desire, and that why. And when you move from that standpoint, it makes it to where picking up a phone is no problem, because you feed from the purpose as to why you get on the phone. Make sense? Number 2. And didn't a handful of them get parts of this already?
No. Well, there might have been a couple, but most of these weren't here when John.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Number 2 is you each have to have a goal or goals. You have to have a plan, and you have to have a schedule. Okay? So remember, I wrote this down when I was where you guys are. I wrote this down going, man, I'm getting the crud beat out of myself. I'm not winning the game. What is it about? And I realized, you know what? When I was around Joan Pate. Now, how many are still trying to get their first sale? Do you know how many deals Joan Pate sold the year that I was asking this question? Does anybody know? Does any of the managers know?
100 plus?
That would be a humble statement. 365 homes.
So you said I was right.
Yes, we're close.
100 plus.
She sold a home a day, and she was the first agent in the history of Utah to earn $1 million in commissions in residential real estate. She's a legend.
Who?
Joan Pate.
Oh.
Okay? 365. So that's why I was like, what? Once you sold 50, there's got to be something more than the money. Now, you may say, well, wait, what's her driving purpose? This isn't about right or wrong. People know, well, she wants this. I mean, you've been around long enough, Russ and Rick and others. Well, she's this and that. I don't care the reason. But this woman is fierce beyond measure and driven like no one I think I've ever met in real estate. 365 homes. It wasn't all short sales, bank owns, or someone handing her a bunch of stuff. She was prospecting every night. She was there late every night that I was there, and she was beating my pants. I mean, she was like blistering me. I mean, I couldn't compete with her, and I couldn't figure out what is it. And when I realized, anyone who's doing that type of volume, has that level of commitment, knows why they're doing it. They are driven from that. You may say, well, what was it? Some people would argue that it was her significance and wanting to be recognized. She wanted to be the #1 agent in the world. Hey, whatever. It doesn't even matter. I don't really actually know the entire answer. I just know that you don't do that if you don't have a significant reason why you're doing it. Then I realized, well, wait, what are her goals? Well, or what are my goals? Do I really have goals? Have I written them down? If I pulled all of you aside and took every one of you individually to lunch, could I sit down and say, show me a list of your top 10 goals? What are you going to do in your life? What are you going to do the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Maybe even 20 years. And do you clearly know the things you're trying to achieve? I want you to imagine that not knowing where you're going from the standpoint of your purpose and your goals, your plan and your schedule, it is as if you are at a starting line of running a marathon with never knowing exactly where the finish line is. And most of you would say, that's ridiculous. I would never do that. I know. And then you take your life. And there's almost no one who sets consistently goals that they have written out and clearly defined when they're going to accomplish them and what they're going to accomplish. Not just in real estate. Not just you say, well, yeah, but my goal is to sell 24 homes this year. What else? That is small in comparison to what you're capable of. Not from the standpoint of 24 homes. What else do you want to see happen in your life? We're going to move there because I think we're going to have time with the time we have. But you've got to know the answers to these questions. Because then what happens, you start making decisions based on not knowing where you're going. Right? What does little Alice in Wonderland thing say when he comes to the fork in the road? What happens, Jonathan?
I don't know if this is the exact quote.
But I don't even know the exact quote, but what is it?
It's just if you don't know where you're going, any road gets you there.
Yeah, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which one you choose, right? Fork in the road. If you don't know where you're going, then it doesn't matter which one you choose. Pretty interesting statement. Pretty interesting statement. Okay, so goals, plan. There's not one of you in here at this point that shouldn't have a business plan. You should clearly have a blueprint. How many of you would like to build a home one day, if you haven't already? Do you plan to do that with no blueprint? You plan to just walk out on your lot, go, throw it down there, let's do it here. Start digging. You're not going to do that. You know you wouldn't do it. But then the most precious asset of your life, which is your time, your energy, your effort, and what you do with it, you don't even know where the plan is. And I'm not trying to be harsh, but if you don't know the plan. So again, early on in my career, I'm like, you know what? What is my plan? And so I started creating really detailed plans. I started figuring out what are my goals. And then the last, of course, is my schedule. I started figuring out, well, what am I going to do with my time? And what if I protected certain parts of my day? And if I mastered them, what would end up happening? Not the whole day. I got to have time where I can just mess around, do whatever. But what if I really became structured in certain parts of my day? What would happen financially for me? Well, I know what'll happen. It'll change everything. Lon, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. So let's say, for example, if you set up like a goal or a plan, like for the end of the year, and you weren't able to reach your goal or your plan, or something happened to you, what would you recommend that specific person to do?
Reset it and reevaluate it. Figure out maybe for a minute, look back and say what happened that stopped that from happening or made that not happen. In almost every case, in the next 4 items I'll give you, you'll be able to figure out in a heartbeat why you didn't do it. So this foundation log that I'm putting up here is a foundation that I go to and I go back to, and I go back, even in my own life still today, I go back to it and go, okay, if things aren't working right, where am I off? If I've set a goal, what do most people do? What do they almost always, you have 2 choices. You can either lower your standards or elevate your action. You can either change the goal or change your approach. Maybe even an easier way of saying it. Change your goal or change your approach. Now, maybe you have to modify the time on the goal. Maybe. But in most cases, for any of us in this room, we have a goal, and if we're not achieving it, it is just simply, you have to change the approach. Hence, I always say, there's nothing in this business you cannot learn, and there's nothing in this business you cannot do. And every success you want, you can have. There's nothing you can't learn. There's nothing you can't do in this business. Just learn it, and then just do it, and have it all that it brings you. So change the approach. You're going to recalculate, reformulate the approach. Which is why, so remember I asked this question, what are all these great agents doing? Because I'm losing this deal. So I realized, you know what? They know why they're doing it. They have set specific goals. They have charted out a plan. They are following a very distinct schedule. And I believe 5 things in your schedule, by the way. You can do lots of things, but just as a side note, know when you're going to go to bed. Know when you're going to wake up or wake up on time. Number 3, exercise. Number 4, you're going to practice and train. And number 5, I'm going to prospect. And as a general statement, I know there may be conflicts, but as a general statement, if I can do and protect that time to 12 noon, I'll make a killing. But if you start negotiating away what time you go to bed, what time you wake up, when you exercise, when you practice and train, and when you prospect, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It just won't happen. It doesn't happen when you don't follow the schedule. It doesn't happen when you don't follow the plan. Right? It just doesn't. So as you go through this, what I want to make sure that you recognize, there's not any of this you can't do. There's no one who can't do these things. You can do them all. You might have to modify because of some commitments that you may have that you can't get out of. But in time, that is what you should be doing. And if you'll do it, you'll make a fortune in this business. Okay? All right, number 3. I remember I wrote down on this little sticky note, I wrote down mindset, confidence, and I wrote down mental toughness. I say, why so many? Because these are the words that came to my mind going, what does a top agent do? Some people say, oh, well, they're arrogant, or well, they're too cocky, or they think they know too much. Have you ever considered the fact that someone like a Michael Jordan just deeply believed in his ability, his will to win, he knew he could do it, and he didn't waver from that? Did Michael Jordan, do you think he walked out ever, possibly, in his life on a basketball court and thought, I'm probably not going to win today, but I'm going to try to do what I can to do my best? No. The top agent doesn't walk around doom and gloom. The top agent protects their mind, protects their confidence, increases their mental toughness over and over and over again. So 10 things. Write these down. Here you go. 10 things. How to protect my mind. Years ago, I sat down with Joanna Williams, one of my dearest and best friends in real estate. I've known her for years. I sat down with her and I said, Joanna, she sits down with me and she says, I am going crazy. I can't get my mind wrapped around this. I am like mentally hemorrhaging. I'm like, well, what's going on? She goes, I don't know. I said, well, let's do a little exercise here. And I said, let me ask you a question. Number 1, have you reviewed and, in so many words, looked at your why or your plan or your schedule? Have you reviewed where you're going? Have you looked at it? Do you know where you're going today? And of course, what did she do? What do you think she said? I haven't looked at that for 6 months. Oh, I did it, but I never looked at it. I'm like, you need to look at it. I said, okay, interesting. What did you listen to today? 5 core people I'd recommend listening to. Besides, of course, Russ. Okay? Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field. Jim Rohn, anything he does, but there's one that's called, I was listening to it today. It is called Living Exceptional Life, I think. Let's just pull it up here. The Art of Exceptional Living. The Art of Exceptional Living. It's one of my favorites. The Art of Exceptional Living. Earl Nightingale, Lead the Field. Number 3, anything that you can download on Mike Ferry's website, download it into your iPhone. You know, an action workshop, a superstar retreat, how to jumpstart your career, 100 objection handlers. Download it all. Number 4 is I'm going to listen to anything by Tony Robbins. Okay? And then number 5, I'm going to say anything that comes from Everest, such as the daily messages, such as the trainings, such as the things you can go online and do. Those 5 things are the things that I continue to learn from and live my life by. I always say, people say, who are your mentors? I'm like, well, most of them are dead. But, you know, and then, of course, you know, Napoleon Hill, and, you know, I'm reading in fact, I'm reading a great biography right now, John Huntsman's, but Andrew Carnegie has a great one, Vanderbilt has a great one, Ben Franklin, George Washington. So any biography I can get my hands on of people I'm interested in who have been extraordinary leaders for our country, or for business, or life, I am interested in what they have done and what they learned. Because I can learn from them. I can speed up the process. I can shorten the distance from getting from point A to point B, just because of what I read. All right? So what do you think she said that day when she listened to? Nothing. All right? I said, okay, well, how much did you read today? As a general rule, by the way, you should read 8 to 10 pages a day. Take you about 20 minutes. So I asked her what she read. Nothing. Okay, all right, excellent. What did you watch? One of my favorite things to do because of YouTube, I love saying, you know what, just put in inspiring videos. And watch a Les Brown, watch a Zig Ziglar, watch a John Maxwell, watch all of these individuals, and what you will see is that your mindset will improve. Number 5, of course, what did she say? She said, well, no, I'm not watching anything. Number 5, I said, well, did you write in your journal today? No, I didn't write in my journal either. Okay, so you didn't write down things that you want. You didn't write down things that you're grateful for. No. Okay. Let me ask you, did you exercise today? Did you get oxygen flowing into your system and building your life and building your energy? No. Okay. Number 7, just by chance, I mean, I know we're on a run here, Joanna, but did you visualize and meditate? Meaning, did you think about what you want, and then did you close your eyes and actually see it? Did you see yourself take the listing? Many, many times I would sit in front of the house or around the corner in some parking lot before I was going on the appointment, and I would visualize myself presenting. Actually, back up. I visualize myself walking up to the door, knocking on the door, sitting down with them, taking the listing, getting the contract signed, putting the home on the market, seeing my sign in the yard, getting it sold, going to closing, having my check in hand, and going to the bank and depositing it. I would close my eyes and I would see that because I needed it to happen. There's a reason why Sir Edmund Hillary, after he had summited Everest for the first time, this is what's awesome. The guy did not even take, in fact, I talked about this when I saw you just a few days ago. I haven't told the story in ages, but I just told it a few days ago. It's top of mind. He's at the top of Everest. He takes a picture of Tenzing Norgay, the Sherpa. There's not even a picture of Sir Edmund Hillary on the top of Everest. If I go to the edge of the Grand Canyon and I drove the whole way, I'm like, man, look at me, here I am. The guy's on the top of the world and doesn't even get a picture of himself. It's amazing. But he comes home and he's from Australia, but he comes home goes to Great Britain, and he's been interviewed on stage. There's 2 things that happen here. He's been interviewed at the same time, either before or after, but he's also on stage. And I'll tell you 2 quick stories about Sir Edmund Hillary. He said, someone asked him, hey, so what was it like being on top of the mountain? And he said, kind of what I imagined it to be. He said, paraphrasing, I was up there 10,000 times before I ever stepped foot on it. And so he kind of shrugged his shoulders like it was no big deal. It was such not a big deal that he didn't even take a picture of himself because he'd already seen himself there 10,000 times. But I don't know if you know this, but Sir Edmund Hillary attempted to summit Everest before the second time that he summited. And he failed. And he was on stage again in Great Britain talking about the expedition. And there's a huge picture on the side of the stage. And he walks over to the stage on the picture and he said, Everest, you may have gotten me, so I'm paraphrasing, you may have gotten me this time. But you've stopped growing and I won't. And I will summit you. And the thing that's interesting is that this guy understood what he was trying to do well before he got there. So do you see the wealth? Do you see the revenue? Do you see the transactions? Do you see yourself with listing inventory? Because here's the deal. I am certain of this. If you can't see yourself financially there, probably not going to get there. If you are a young person in my car and my kids bring their kids and the friends into my car, one of the first questions I ask them, now don't be offended by this, but I ask them, so what are your plans? They go, what do you mean? Well, do you plan to be rich? And they're like, money isn't something we talk about in our family. Well, okay, we're talking. In my family, we do. Are you going to be rich? And I only had one person tell me no, by the way, Josh. Just one. And then they told me how much they loved Obama, and then that was awesome because they were on a debate team, and I picked them up from a debate, and it was awesome. It was like, my daughter was mortified after this. And I said, well, what does a Democrat stand for? What's the difference between a Republican? Why do you not believe it? What's wrong with capitalism and free enterprise? And it was awesome. But I always like to know, are you going to be rich? Well, if you haven't made a decision to be so, it's probably unlikely that you are. If you're like, well, I'm just going to see what's going to happen. I'm going to see what might happen in this business. I'm going to see if I can put a deal or two together. Stop all that. There's nothing you can't learn, nothing you can't do, no success you can't have. So, if that being the case, then what do you see? So go back to Joanna. What do you think when I asked her, so today did you close your eyes and visualize? And then she said, well, no. I said, what I bet you did is you closed your eyes or you started thinking about how you couldn't make it. How it's not going to work, how tough it's going to be, how hard it is, how you can't make it come together. That's what you thought about, or that's what you saw. Completely the opposite of what you would do to have mental toughness. Why do all the guys now come in when they're about to get into the game or the sports arena, they have earphones on? You see Michael Jordan on the sideline, have his eyes closed, music in his ears. LeBron James doing the same thing, all these guys. What do you think they're doing with their eyes closed on the side with music going? Just sitting there thinking about how they're going to miss every shot? Jack Nicklaus said that a golf shot, that 20% of it is setup, 80% of it is visualization. If you're a golfer, Jason Day, who took second place in the FedEx Cup, if you watch him behind his ball, he does this. What do you think he's doing? Falling asleep before he's about to hit the ball? What is he doing? He's seeing the shot next to the flag. But we're in real estate. Would you do something like that? The answer is yes. If you're going to protect your mind, that's what you're going to do. Okay? Number 8. I asked her if she was being coached. She said, well, yeah. I go, when? Well, right now. I'm like, okay. We got 1 out of 10 so far. Number 9. I said, what trainings have you gone to today or this week? Of course, that day, because she didn't show up at the morning meeting, what did she say? She said, none. Okay? This isn't complicated. When you start looking at this list, you sit and go, I think I could do that. And then I asked her, what trainings do you have scheduled? Are you going to Tony Robbins? Are you going to Mike Ferry? I can share with you story after story where people would say, how are you doing that? You don't have the money. You can't afford to go. You know what my answer was? You can't afford to go to Mike Ferry? Like when they go, my wife would say, we can't afford that. And I would say, we cannot afford not to go. I have to go. Because I have to recognize. How many of you have a 4-year degree? How much did it cost for you to get it? How much?
Over
$20,000. So I hope that some of you in here, some of you will say, okay, where'd you get your degree? I'll be in these rooms with all these high-power attorneys, power suits, power ties. We'll be in there. And always the thing, hey, so where did you go to school? I'm like, I went to the U. I could never pass Math 105, so I stopped. I figured out how to figure out my commissions and hire people to do the rest. And that has worked so far. Okay? And I'm only saying that from the standpoint that you've spent thousands of dollars on educating yourself, and what's classic is you're in real estate now. Which is fine, but you only needed 120 hours of continuing ed, or whatever they call it, at Stringham, and you call it a day, and you're ready. And then we sit there and go, well, I don't know. I might have to put that on a credit card. I might have to put $500 to educate myself, elevate myself, improve my mindset. Oh, I don't know. It's in California. You're not pulling a hand cart to California. You're getting on a plane for $300, okay? So go get over there in whether it's in Vegas or the National C21 Convention in March, and you educate yourself as if you got a degree. And so you know what I've said to myself? I may not have a degree from the U, but I got a PhD in how to run my life regarding real estate. And I said to myself, you know what? If I went and got my degree, I'd spend $30,000, $40,000 to do it. Well, if I'm not going to get that, I'm going to spend $30,000 or $40,000 to become a master in this game. And the top agents in this company, there are over 26 people on track for $500,000. That's crazy. They'll make more than most doctors. And then we get people, oh, I just can't afford. Stop telling yourself that story. You cannot afford not to go. When it comes to the way in which you're trained, your coaching, all of these other different dynamics. Okay? And then number 10 is making sure, you know, I kind of combined them, but I messed it up a little bit. Okay? But number 10 is, are you accountable to someone around you? Is someone holding you accountable to stay on course, to do your job? Whether it's just lunch that you buy if you don't show up on time, if it's just, hey, the first person to set the first appointment owes the person $20, if you don't, whatever, but someone holding you accountable. So out of all these things, she was able to show this one thing. And this is not to be, hey, look at George, but you know what I did? I said, well, Joanna, guess what? Today, this morning, when I was in my journal, I reviewed my plans, my goals. I looked at why I was doing this. I revisited that. I took 30 to 60 seconds, and I visualized and I meditated. Man, I've already listened to things. I've read things. I've watched things. I've written in my journal. I exercised at 5:30 this morning. You know, I actually had, that day, I had already had my coaching call. I was going to the trainings, and I was highly accountable to a few different people in different areas of my life. And I said, do you think there's really any difference between you and me? None. My commitment level to knowing that I have to have this at its height. This is a brutal business. Guys, today, or last night, I'll tell you how hard this business is. You don't think it's hard? And I'm not suggesting this is the reason, but one of our dear agents in our company, there's been 2 of them in the last 6 years. And I hear about it all the time. It's not just our company, because I'm not making light of it. But last night, someone in our company committed suicide. 3 years ago, another one committed suicide. And what I am certain of is the decisions that they're making in their lives are so inconsistent that I would bet you, if I had the chance to talk to this awesome young man who committed suicide, I would bet you that he hadn't done any of those things that day. You may say, well, that's a little harsh. No, I'm not suggesting it to be harsh. I'm just suggesting that if we don't think our mindset, our confidence, our belief in ourselves is paramount, that literally there are people who get so destructive mentally that all of a sudden they go down this pathway, is unfortunate beyond measure. So I would challenge you to recognize that, look, if you want to build, remember I asked the question, what do these guys do? Well, you know what I realized? Their belief in themselves and their confidence was off the chart. Number 4. Any thoughts, questions? Number 4. Skill sets. I have to know what I'm doing. 10 skills. Just write them down. I'll give them to you. We won't talk about it because we don't have time. But here's 10 skills that you have to master. Remember, nothing you can't do, nothing you can't learn, no success you can't have. Number 1, get the skill set to set an appointment. Simple statement, but if you cannot consistently set an appointment every day, you're not going to win this game. It doesn't matter whether you're calling web leads, FSBOs, expired, just listed, just sold, door knocks if FSBOs expired, door knocks if just listed, just sold. It doesn't matter whether you're calling your sphere. If you can't set appointments consistently, you will lose the game of real estate. Number 1 skill above all of them, be able to set an appointment. Because if you could just set it, you could take another agent with you to help you get the listing, or another agent to help you with the buyer. But you got to be able to learn how to set them consistently. Number 1. Number 2, lead follow-up. Number 2, lead follow-up. Gotta follow up with your leads. Number 3, pre-qualify. So you're not wasting your time with people who are never going to buy or who never are going to actually sell. Pre-qualify, number 3. Number 4, preparation. Such as, let me just get preparation for these 3 areas. Pricing to price a home. 2, find a home. So the properties, being able to find them, right? And then number 3 is the listing or buyer packet. So I've got to know how to find a buyer properties, I got to know how to get to a price of a property, and I got to be able to have my listing packet together. Listing or buyer packet. It should be, it's a whole other class we can give, but you got to have that stuff. Okay?
Which we're doing on Thursday.
Perfect.
Right.
What number were we on? 5? Okay, number 5, listing and buyer presentation. So basically your presentation. Number 5, the ability to present. Look, when you look at this list of 10 things, you're going to go, I can do this. How many of you got your degree again in college? Didn't you look at your prerequisites, right? And you said, well, I got to do this. Well, this is the same thing. You just got to look at these 10 things and go, all right, I got to have a pretty good handle on each one of these at some point. And if you do, you will make a huge amount of money. And you'll live your dreams. What number we're on? 6. Okay. The ability to handle objections. Objection handling. Handling objections. Number 7. Close the sale. You got to be able to say, sign the contract. And have them still actually either like you and sign. I mean, at some level, right? Number, 8? 8? Number 8, price reductions. You got to be able to get a reduction of price. Once you take a listing, you got to get it sold. If it's not priced right, you got to be able to get a reduction. Number 9, is you got to be able to give great customer service. Great customer service. How well do you serve the customer? Number 10, you got to be able to, once you have the customer service, once you get the reductions, you got to be able to negotiate a contract. And I said 10, it's actually 11 things. I got the 2 lists confused. Okay, and number 11 is to future pace. Future pace. Let me give you an example. The key box will be up on the door in the next 24 hours. You get it up, which negotiate contracts, future pace. Basically, cast a message of the future. What's happening next? Under promise, over deliver, right? Not over promise, under deliver, right? It's making sure that we do what we say we're going to do. So we say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the key box will be on the door in the next 24 hours. You get it up the next hour. Your sign will be up in the next 3 days. You get it up the next day. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's probably expected that when you have an offer come in on your home, they're going to ask you to buy a home warranty. Don't be surprised. Guess what they're also going to ask you for? What else are they going to ask for? Closing costs, right? Right, Jonathan? Tell them. Don't be shocked. Future pace. There's so many other areas, but I'm just kind of giving you the perspective. What does that mean? It's being able to call your shot. It's like Babe Ruth. Man, it's going over left field. Man, that's where I'm putting it. That's what's going to happen. All right? What number are we on?
11.
Oh, that was 11? All right, number 12. Work with highly qualified buyers. The ability to work a buyer, show a buyer, take them through the home, get them to write the offer. Not the presentation, not when they engage you, but legitimately being able to work with the buyer. That you're better than walking into the kitchen and going, here's the kitchen. Really? I didn't know. You're not showing blind people consistently. They knew it was the kitchen. So beyond just saying the obvious and being a glorified showing agent, what value do you bring as you move through that buying process? And I know that Russ and others are helping you through that process, but look, those are the 12 skills. Gang, if you master those, the rest of this deal comes together. Now imagine, you had your mindset brutally, ruthlessly, intensely covered. You had the 12 skill sets I just gave you. You had a good picture and framework of those, and you had a capacity for those. And then you knew why you were doing what you were doing. You had your goals set, you knew your plan, you followed your schedule. Do you think you'd fail? There's no way. There's no way that you would fail. It's impossible. Unless, the kicker, unless you become undisciplined. Here's the sad part. So many agents who have all the belief in the world, who have all the skill sets in the world, and then all of a sudden, they just throw it all away because they choose to be so undisciplined. They choose to not do what they say they're going to do. Discipline and accountability.
Now you know why I hold you accountable.
Right,
John was also.
right, pardon?
Yeah, John was.
John also was.
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you
he'll
can
come
feel
down.
good.
Excellent.
There's a
We need to be.
surprise.
Huh?
There's a surprise.
And most things in life, I know in marriage, 80% of fidelity does not constitute greatness.
Oh.
Right? But I know that in most things in business, if you are doing what you're supposed to do, 80%, if you work 4 out of 5 days a week, as I mean, some of you are highly educated here, 4 out of 5 days, the percentage is how much? Guess what? It's 80%, Josh. 80%. And I know that if you are accountable and do what you say you're going to do for 80% of the time in this business, you'll make a fortune. Stop beating yourself up because you're not always 100%. I love it if you are. And if you try to, and that's your goal, your objective, of course it should be. But boy, if you're 80% of the time on track, imagine 80% of the listings appointments you go on, you take. Imagine 80% of the time that you are to show up at a training, you're here. Right? 80% of the time that you go on and take a buyout, you put it under contract. 80% of the homes you list actually sell. Ooh, man, if you can work above it anywhere around 80%, you're going to make a fortune in this business. There are some things obviously you need to be 100% in. Your integrity, your honesty, the truth that you speak, right? Your marriage, all of course, right? But there's things that if you just worked your life at 80%, man, you'd make a fortune. Most people are working at 0 to 20%, and it should be at 80%. And if they move into 80, they make a fortune. If they don't,